back to the channel. Winter is coming, and today it is our house roundup in our Winds of Winter primer. That means we're going to deal with 4 of the great houses that we have not covered already in their own video, and we're going to start with House Hightower. So House Hightower hasn't had a lot of page time with us so far, but in the lore they are a very large and powerful house. Now, House Hightower were supporters of Renly Baratheon. When that initial kind of vacant throne came about, during the Clash of Kings, they backed Renly, and when Renly died, they did not back Stannis. Now that has left them in a weird situation. They currently believe, I believe, that Lord Leighton Hightower thinks of the Greyjoys as his greatest threat, and he is currently staying in his tower. He has been in his tower. He's kind of like a recluse. He's not really left his tower in the last 10 years, but he has his sons on various missions to improve the defences of Old Town and to build ships and train troops. And we believe he has quite a large force at his disposal, but they seem to be very insular and very defensive at the moment. Whether or not they'll play a big part in Winds of Winter, we believe so. They are becoming more and more pushed to the forefront of the story, obviously with the introduction of Euron and his current campaign with Samwell Tarly going to Old Town and the Citadel. We are starting to see more and more plot threads kind of drawing around the High Towers, and it would be interesting to see more of them in the Winds of Winter. Next up, let's talk about House Arryn. Now, House Arryn is in a really interesting position in that they've pretty much been untouched by all the wars so far. They have a kind of impenetrable mountain fortress. They have 20,000 trained knights and soldiers. They have plenty of food to survive a long winter campaign. And they have, unfortunately, sweet Robert Arryn, who is not a very good head of their household. And unfortunately, the ward for the Arryns is Peter Baelish, who's obviously kind of a bad guy. Now, we expect a lot of politicking coming in the Winds of Winter as far as House Arryn go. We have Sansa versus Baelish versus Sir Harold Harding. And we expect a fight for the control of House Arryn. And then from there, hopefully, we get to see whether or not the Arryns get involved in the wars, whether they go to the Riverlands, whether they go to the north, whether they decide to sit back, whether their army is destroyed or is utilised in any way. I think we'll have a lot to do with who of those 3 manages to come out looking the strongest. Let's talk about House Tyrell. Now, House Tyrell are very deeply allied with a wounded and insecure House Lannister, and that is causing some issues. We have Marjorie Tyrell looking to be tried for crimes of indecency, and Mace Tyrell has taken his soldiers away from their siege of Storm's End to come and support Marjorie at King's Landing. That seems like a very smart move at the time. Obviously, Marjorie will be able to command a lot of power through Tommen Baratheon, but unfortunately, it's a bad move because we know the Golden Company and Young Griff have landed and they are looking at Storm's End, and they could literally just sweep in and finish that siege that has been, held for so long by the Tyrells, and take Storm's End. That will severely weaken the Crown lands and especially the claims of Tommen Baratheon as king. If Young Griff manages to come in and say, look, I'm Aegon Targaryen, I've taken Storm's End, the ancestral home of the Baratheons, what are you going to do about it? I've got the Golden Company, probably the best trained mercenaries in the world. What are you going to do to stop me? Mace Tyrell is going to be stuck in King's Landing, worrying about what's happening to his daughter. That's not very good. Loras Tyrell was also on siege duty. He was trying to lift Dragonstone's siege, which he did successfully, but has severely injured himself. So that has left the Knight of Flowers in a very delicate situation where he cannot currently leave Dragonstone and support his father and his sister, and that has left Tyrells, which look like one of the most secure houses, in a bit of an awkward situation. Obviously, they've got the Tarleys to help them out, but things aren't looking too bright for the Tyrells. Now let's look at some members of House Martell. So the Martells of Dawn Doran Martell, the head of the house. Now, he is playing the Game of Thrones just about as good as anyone. He has really let his daughter, Arianne, really take the reins. He's let her in on his plots now, and he has unleashed the sand snakes. He has released them from the captivity. He worked them. He really played the sand snakes like a harp. He's done a great job there, and he has them, doing various things now for him. And what's really interesting is that his nephew is young Griff. Now, will he support young Griff and the Golden Company in their exploits? I'm thinking maybe he will. I think there's talk of Winds of Winter that he might send Arianne over to meet with young Griff. Will he try to marry those two off? Will he try to build an alliance there between the Targaryens and the Martells? I believe so. Look, it was a thing that he did before. Quentyn Martell, unfortunately, was burned alive, but we do know he was being used to court Dany. That didn't go too well. He thought I'm Dornish, I might have some Targaryen blood in me. I'm going to try and wield the power of the dragons. Unfortunately, that worked very poorly for him, and Quentyn Martell is no longer with us. Tristan Martell is an interesting one. Again, he is really a pawn through marriage as well. He's been trying to be set up with Marcella. Listen, it's been talked about that Cersei wants Tristan to go to King's Landing. That's obviously going to be a very bad idea. There is clearly an assassination attempt in the works against Tristan, so let's hope that doesn't come to be the case in the Winds of Winter. Now, Arianne Martell is a very interesting character. She was the once betrothed of Viserys Targaryen. Now he's obviously dead. She is now to be Princess of Dorne and take over from Doran Martell, who is not in the best of health. We have it that she may go during the Winds of Winter to meet with young Griff and travel to the Stormlands. So that would be a really, really interesting turn of events. And I would love to see her out of her normal kind of courtly surroundings and see her out of Dorne for once. And that really just leaves the Sand Snakes. They have been unleashed finally by Doran Martell. They have all been given different tasks to carry out, ways to destabilize Doran's enemies, and we will probably see something to do with the Sand Snakes in a Winds of Winter and the effects that they are having on potentially people like the Lannisters. That should be really, really interesting. House Martell have a lot of pieces on the board. They have carefully maneuvered themselves into a really interesting space. Obviously, it remains to be seen what will happen with people the likes of Gerald Dane, the Dark Star, who is still, is he helping them? Is he against them? Will he get tracked down by Balon Swan? Will there be a showdown? What I will say is, next week we're going to tackle 23 characters that weren't covered by the houses and the videos we've done on all of the houses in A Song of Ice and Fire. So there's loads of characters we haven't covered. Brienne of Tarth, Gendry Baratheon, the Onion Knight, the Hound. There are loads and loads and loads of characters we haven't covered in these videos, and we're going to deal with 23 of the biggest characters next week. So join me next week where we will wrap up all the characters that aren't covered by the great houses in next week's video.